Now I would like to invite Maria Morrissey to speak to everyone assembled. Maria?
This is my brother, Kevin. And I'm here today to tell you his story. It's too late to do Kevin any good, but if I can tell his story, and if it will help convince any legislators of the importance of passing this legislation and save somebody else from the pain that our family and his friends have gone through, then I'm happy to do that. Kevin was bullied at his job by his boss for 3 years. I know this because his staff, his colleagues, who were also his friends, told me this on the day that he took his own life. And when I asked them what that meant, because I'd never heard of it before, they said that he, even though he did a great job at his job, his boss would yell at him in these humiliating tirades in front of them, whom he managed. He would respond to emails. He sabotaged his work. Kevin felt his reputation that he had worked so hard for to build up himself had been compromised by his boss's behavior toward him. This went on for 3 years, and it escalated and escalated. And in the last 2 weeks of his life, it escalated to the point where Kevin was instructed by email by his boss, who was in another state, to leave the office, don't speak to anyone, don't tell anyone about this email, do your work from home, you've been accused of unacceptable workplace behavior. Kevin emailed him back, what do you mean, what have I done, please explain. He got no response whatsoever. A week went by during which Kevin was home alone, unable to speak to any of his colleagues, get support from anyone of his friends. And he called the University of Virginia 17 times that week. He called every office that he could think of that might help him. And the best answer that he got was, well, maybe we can have a meeting with Ted, but if Ted doesn't want to come, then Ted doesn't have to come. Ted ended up calling a meeting on Monday at which there was a third party that Kevin asked to be there. And Ted was unable to give any explanation for why he kicked Kevin out of the office. And can you imagine how it must have felt when you're managing people to be kicked out of the office that you're managing with no explanation, how humiliating and stressful and anxiety-making that must have been. And when no answer was forthcoming from Ted, another colleague quit. And finally the president's office took notice. They had a meeting with Ted. They came back and said, well, he's not going to retaliate. And Kevin said, no, watch, he's going to retaliate. He said, no, 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 it'll be all over now. He won't retaliate. 2 days later, he sent Kevin an email accusing him of nearly causing the death of some journalist in Mexico that he never met by his incompetence. And apparently that was the last straw. Kevin walked away from his home and he put a bullet through his head because I think that he felt that he had no choice. His choice was to stay in this job that he loved, but where he was made sick by this constant abuse and harassment and unfair treatment for which he found no remedy from any office in the university. Or he could quit his job in this economy and go look for another job as a managing editor of some small literary journal without a college degree, and give up his condo that he loved, and leave his friends that he loved, and leave his community that he loved. And in the end, it was the Sophie's choice that he couldn't make. And he said, please tell everyone I'm sorry, but I simply can't bear it anymore. And in that last week, the entire staff had gone to the president's office and said, we have a hostile work environment. We have a toxic work environment. Please help us. One staff member quit. One staff member was diagnosed with PTSD and given medical leave. And Kevin killed himself. 3 out of 4 in 1 week. And yet, who's still working? Making $170,000 a year? The bully boss. And everybody else is gone. So, I really feel like, had there been legislation in place, had people in HR known what to do, known how to move forward, had some teeth to demand that Ted come to a meeting, Kevin would be alive today. And, you know, when I found out that we're the only Western democracy that does not have a law against workplace bullying, I was determined right then and there that that needs to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. We've been joined by Assemblyman Fred Thiel. Would you like to say
No, I'm
a few
fine. I
words?
just came to show my support. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I would like to invite Kathy Hermes to speak at the lectern.
6 years ago, on this very day, at this very hour, my friend Marlene Braun put a bullet in her head. She left me a suicide note that said her boss had made her life utterly unbearable. I was the executor of her estate, and so I was the first person that got the call from the Bureau of Land Management, where she worked as the monument manager of the Carrizo Plain National Monument. Marlene was a federal employee with a rank of GS-13. She had been in federal service for 13 years, a veteran of the United States Army, a scientist who was brilliant and who wanted to manage her monument, which included grazing and oil and gas leases, with scientific precision. Marlene was great at her job. She was a great person, not a perfect person, an ordinary person with a brilliant mind and a funny personality who could drive you crazy by wanting to argue everything under the sun. She loved her job. And for the first couple of years, it worked out well. A new boss was sent in because of the grazing issue on the Carrizo Plain, and I'm not going to go into detail about that, but Marlene had submitted a resource management plan that he didn't like, that he was ordered to change, and instead of focusing on the environmental issues at stake, he went after her. And this may sound trivial, but a lot of workplace bullying starts with trivialities. This all began because of an email. She sent an email to the managing partners on the Carrizo Plain National Monument, to the Nature Conservancy and California Fish and Game, that corrected a factual mistake her boss had made. Failing to CC him on the email, he determined that she was ruining his reputation, and he told her he was going to issue a reprimand. In the federal service, this is almost unheard of. Instead of a reprimand, she waited for weeks, never got the reprimand, and he finally decided that he would suspend her for 7 days without pay, an escalated level of discipline that no one expected. She was told that she would take this time over Christmas. She appealed the decision, and on Valentine's Day, 2005, she found out that her appeal was denied by the California State Director of the Bureau of Land Management, Mike Poole. There were a lot of incidents of bullying that took place. Everything from belittling, where she was ordered out of the room like a kindergartner during a meeting that she was supposed to manage, to work sabotage. He even stole memos that she had written, took her name off them, and submitted them as his own. After a meeting out in the middle of nowhere, he stopped her on the road after everyone had left, cornered her in her truck, and screamed at her to the point where she felt he might actually physically hurt her. He screamed at her in his office. And she told me on the phone, this was worse than the way her ex-husband, who had been an abusive alcoholic, had treated her. We had no word for it. We didn't know workplace bullying existed. One of her friends did say to her, "Your boss is a bully," but it didn't mean anything, really. We kept saying to Marlene, "Why don't you change jobs?" And she kept saying, "But I love my job. I'm a good employee. This is not right." But finally, she said, "I want to get a transfer." She asked him for a transfer. He said, "I will never give you a recommendation or transfer you out of here." When I got the call at 4 o'clock in my office in Connecticut, they were telling me it was suicide. I felt like my friend had been murdered. She shot herself at 9:30 in the morning, California time. It took her 2 hours or more to die. The fire service, the Forest Service, was nearby. Her boss would not let them help her. Instead, he sent 2 employees on a 2-hour drive, and she died a slow and probably very agonizing death. There was an investigation by the Department of Interior that concluded this was a personality conflict. I don't think personality conflicts go this far. My friend, you can see her here, 46 years old when she died, very smart, very capable, very lovely. And she felt that she had nowhere to go, that she was absolutely trapped. Today, her bullies sit in offices in Washington, D.C. They are your science coordinator of the Bureau of Land Management. They are the director of operations of the Bureau of Land Management. So I'm here because I would like to see some justice for my friend. I would like to see workplace bullying laws passed in every state and for federal employees. I called the Workplace Bullying Institute when I didn't know what to do, and I became a coordinator for the state of Connecticut, because that's where I live, and I will work until this legislation is passed. Thank you very much.